So, Mr. Seth, thank you for taking time out today for our readers.
Thank you, Sandeep and Pramod.
Great. So, Mr. Seth, to start with, right, one of your key tenets that you spoke about in the book is the desire to get into challenging situations and being very comfortable with discomfort. Can you talk a little bit about this and take an example from your life about this principle?
Sure. I think there are only two options available to you. One is be complacent, others is embrace challenge and embrace difficult situations. So I think right from the beginning, I had this urge for accepting challenges and accepting difficult situations and work on it. I remember at the beginning of my career when I was working for JCB, and what I'm talking of is late 80s when automation was virtually zero. I mean, companies were working on manual books and stuff like that. That was the time I decided that why not automate our financial processes? And right at the beginning of my career, looked at that aspect of automation. And it was for me an easy thing to let it go and just work on the basis of what it was. But I decided no, one has to do something very different. So it was something that really paid off later because we were able to derive a lot of value out of what we did. And when I moved on later part of my career in JCB, I decided that now it's a time for us to look at a bigger picture, and that's when we worked on a strategic business plan so that the company can move forward 5 years, 10 years in terms of its strategy, in terms of what it is required to do at later part of its challenge. The other important aspect was we had processes which were dated, and we wanted to work on that, and we worked on re-engineering all the business processes. So these were some sort of initiatives and challenges that I continued to take at that point in time, which was virtually my initial job in the initial period. Then I moved on, and then the other challenge that I remember is while I was in Escorts, the Escorts were working on a dated IT system, and they wanted to implement ERP. Now, any ERP implementation is a big challenge for any organization because it needs a huge change management. It needs a huge process improvement before you can actually go through it. So that was an exercise for over a year. And I actually accepted that challenge because I was very new to this ERP environment. But I said, no, I will try and accept it and do what best I can do. So it was not only just the ERP implementation, but it was also about what values can it bring into the organization in terms of implementation, and also how do you ensure that people accept it? Because there's always a resistance of people in terms of acceptance. So that was the other bit that I remember. While I was there was in Escorts, there was huge liquidity crisis because tractor industry was going through a rough patch. Inventories had built up, and there was a need for liquidity as well as for optimizing cost, and both in terms of cost of capital and the other costs. So I worked on various structures at that point in time to look at how we can bring money and also how we can reduce the interest rates. So structures like securitization and many other products that we worked on, I think these were challenges that happened at that point in time. They continued throughout my career, but when I was in Maruti, at the early stage, we had a merger that took place between a powertrain plant and us. And that was something that also involved alignment. It involved cost optimization and also meant change management because you had to optimize the workforce and you had to rationalize them, bring them in other areas and so on. So these were some of these things that I remember. There have been many others, but that's a long story. I think the book will tell you more about it.
Great. Thanks a lot for sharing these details. One more question that we found very interesting in the book, right? And also related to the organization. Maruti was one of the first Indian organizations to bring the just-in-time and other supply chain best practices to India. So can you talk a little bit about how you implemented this, how do you learn this and introduce this to the organization?
All right, so this concept of just-in-time is a well-known Japanese concept. Where it's been there for a while with them. If I remember correctly, my experience of just-in-time goes back to the JCB days. And when I was there, we used to work on a component store and we used to stock stuff and so on. So in 1993, I went to the UK plant. And when I visited them, I realized that they work on just-in-time. It was quite a revelation at that point in time because in India, it was not heard of so much. And that's when we came back and we brought this practice to the company, which involved logistic planning, which involved milk routes and things like that. But that was a huge learning and huge experience. In Maruti, we were practicing just-in-time when I was here. But what we really worked on was on the supply chain side in terms of the pillars of excellence. So what we really worked on was how do we evolve the manufacturing capabilities of our suppliers, the quality, safety, financial management, those kind of pillars. So it was kind of an inclusive work with them to ensure that while you are growing on one side in terms of your excellence, you ensure that your supply chain also grows accordingly and have excellence in those.
Fantastic. Sounds great. And one more thing, right? So you in the book, you have spoken about integrated financial reporting, and you have been one of the earliest adapters of this concept. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
So I think integrated financial reporting is now a key for any organization. There's a lot of value that the stakeholders place on the integrated financial reporting. So it's largely to do with your social aspects, environment, your intellectual capital, and so on. So what we really worked on was that in all aspects of our business, we have worked very closely with our supply chain. So there has been an inclusive involvement of all the supply chain partners, including our dealer network, including our suppliers, in terms of taking decisions which are in the interest of all the stakeholders. We also looked at environment very closely in terms of how to reduce the CO2 print both in our vehicles that we sell, also in our manufacturing process that we are doing. This is a continuous endeavor with which we have been working for a long period of time. And we will continue to work towards the reduction of CO2 over a longer period. Also on the human side, we have put a lot of emphasis in terms of looking at long-term needs of our employees, their welfare activity, both in terms of medical, in terms of their housing requirements, and so on and so forth, so that we've kind of give them an environment where they can work with harmony, with ease, and then be more productive. So I think it's an area which is an inclusive growth area where we look at sustainable growth along with all our partners.
Very interesting, Mr. Seth. One of the other things which we really found interesting is, the focus on the industry, right? So the auto industry is undergoing a rapid transformation. How do you see Maruti transforming itself to sustain as a leader in this changing landscape?
Sure. So I think you find that after every few decades, there will be, a shift in the industry, and industry is now undergoing many regulations, including emission norms, including tightening of the so-called CAFE norms, which is to do with your CO2 regulations, and also bringing out stricter safety measures and so on and so forth. So what is going to happen now really is that technology products will undergo change. You will find more technology interventions. You will find more newer products coming in the marketplace. You will also find customer preferences changing over a period because the industry is undergoing a huge change. India is still continue to be a very high potential market because it's still very underpenetrated market. So one will have to work alongside the regulatory framework of the globe as well as of the country. And on the other side, you have to exploit the potential of the underpenetrated market over a longer period. So it's a very interesting period where a lot of change will be witnessed over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of how industry will evolve in terms of new products, new technologies, because norms have been changing and they will continue to change for better. And environmentalists have been, voicing about reducing CO2, etc., which is a global issue now. So that's going to happen. and that's a given now. So I guess it will be interesting to watch the next 5 to 10 years in terms of how players are moving. We are well positioned. We are working towards it. We know that these are the important changes that we have to drive our business to, and we are reasonably poised in terms of moving forward.
There are many interesting things and takeaways for our young readers, Mr. Seth, in the book, right? But one of the things I thought we can, maybe touch upon today is if a young professional, right, wanted to join your organization in finance, what key attribute would you look for?
No, so my take from the young professionals would be that one, he should be adaptable. C, he should be a person who's willing to take initiative. He should be innovative and he should have longevity. What I find is that a lot of people work for a very short period and they run away because there's a lure of money or there are jobs available. But what I would suggest to young professionals is invest in a company, try to learn and try to contribute, try to add value, do some innovation, do some out of the box thinking, make your brand value before you even decide to move on. I think that's very important. And that's what gives you a real value at the later part of your career.
Yeah, that's a 24-karat gold advice, Mr. Seth. Thank you so much for today and many more hours that you spent over the last couple of years to share with our readers your journey. And thank you, viewers. Thanks for watching.